So this is introductory lecture. We're talking about visuals. I try to do this first so that while you're making your visual for me, you do remember that Monday you have a visual, and it'll be a September visual. And you will get up here and just explain tiny bit, okay, this is my September visual. This is how I'm going to use it. It might be as simple as I have capital and little letters, we're matching them up. Okay? So when you get up here, don't get up here and say, well, I really don't know what I should do with this. Okay? It's all in the presentation. You might not like your visual, but you get up here and make me think you love it, and I might love it too. Same with your kids in your class. You might put a lot of work into something, you don't like it, but kids love to have the teacher think highly of them. So you get up there and you say, this is going to be the best visual, we're going to have fun with this, we're going to learn, and they will like it. Okay? Presentation is a big part of doing our visuals. I want you to learn to get up and like what you're doing for me. And if you have any questions, you're doing something, feel free to stop and see me. Okay? All right, so we were talking about our visuals, okay? Why do we do them? We started this, we didn't get very far into it. Why do we do them? We do it for the Lord, we do it to cultivate good work, and we do it to set the atmosphere. Okay? You should already have that in your notes. Yeah? Roman numeral 2, how do we do them properly? Make them big, bright, and simple. Okay? How far did I get on that? Have a purpose. That's what I thought. Okay. So I'm not going to go over that. Just look at it. Put some thought process behind it. It's all that stuff we talked about last week. Okay. So different kinds of bulletin boards you're going to want to do in your classroom throughout the year. Roman numeral 3, the different kinds of bulletin boards. You can do verse boards. Remember me telling you that it would be very wise to take a camera and go around and get snaps of all, or just take your phone and get snaps of all of them. That would be a very wise thing to do. You will have, by the end of one semester even, so many ideas. And then you take those ideas and you change them to fit your classroom someday. You'll be so glad you did it, because you think about it, you've got those, and you've already got all the color scheme, you've got the visual. You can take those and scan them. Right? Your pictures, you can scan them and use those as your bulletin board ideas. I don't have a problem with that. You're going to find out later, how do I get my ideas? From other people. I am not ingenious when it comes to, oh, Mrs. Brader has such good ideas. My ideas come from other people and other things. So you should take advantage of that while you're here. All right? So verse boards are wonderful because it plants a thought in the students' minds. Okay? So you get a verse up there, and throughout the day, just point to it and say, oh, I see somebody really thinking about our verse. I like to see that. Kids, let's look at this verse. Why? Okay, you use your boards. Verse boards, seasonal boards. Good work boards. Can I say something about good work boards? I think many times, new teachers especially fall into this trap. They think, oh, good work. Yes, anybody who gets a 100% is going to get their paper on my board. Can anybody tell me the flaw in that thinking?
Maybe someone that didn't do so well on their work, it wasn't quite 100, but they really improved, so it should be put up as well.
Don't forget the improvement aspect. Because you know what? I was one of those students. I don't care how many tests I took, I always missed at least one thing on my tests. Always. I'll never forget the first time I got a 100%, I framed it. I did. I took it home and framed it, and it was like, we all got hundreds on that. I said, not me. I don't get 100s. I get 99s. I get A's. I was an A, B student in everything, but not 100%. So if you have a motivational idea, a good work board, and you say, if you get 100%, you've just lost a third of your group. And your motivation has just gone out the board for them. So don't forget along with your good work, have a most improved. You can even have that on your board even. You can have stuff for your 100%, your A's, and maybe right in the middle or in a certain section on it, just a little bit different color, and it'll pop out for them. And you can say, you know what? That spot right there is for the one who I think has improved the most. And you've just made it possible for every single student to get their stuff on the board. Okay? And what student does not like to have his paper and his work up so everyone can see it? They all do. They might not act like it, but I promise you have a new board and the students walk in, and even the ones that you do not think care will be looking. I wonder if my name's up there. Okay? So use that to your advantage as a teacher. So, I got to keep moving. Good work boards. Subject boards. Subject boards. You want to do a math board. You want to do a phonics board, reading, spelling, all of the classes that you teach. You can make it specific to that area. Those help a lot. And then motivational boards. I say motivation. You say, well, isn't that what a good work board is? Yes, but a motivation opens it up to anything. Many times for young students, I have to do a motivational board that is no demerits. Right now I have a motivation up in my classroom because they're learning to branch off and they forget things. My motivation is, if you get to my branch off room and you haven't forgotten your pencils, you haven't forgotten your crayons, you haven't forgotten your spelling book, your reading book, every day since I've started school, kids have forgotten something. So their motivation is, if you don't forget anything, you get to put a sticker on your chart. It's a motivation. Whatever your students are struggling with, motivate them. Find a way. Do you know, games in the classroom is a motivation. Playing a game motivates them to want to participate. And what happens when students participate? They learn. So motivate. So use your bulletin boards. If you have a bulletin board in your classroom and you never talk about it, you never see it, you're wasting time. Your time, your effort, but you can use it and enhance your class so much. Okay? Now, this lecture is the visuals. I'm talking mainly about bulletin boards, but can we not apply that to the visuals that you're going to be making up there too? Whatever I'm saying here can be for any type of visual. Okay? Where do we get our ideas? Oh, there's a wealth of sources out there. I sometimes will take greeting cards. I find a greeting card that has the cutest pictures on it, and I use them as my visuals. Books, coloring books make wonderful visual ideas. Okay, because a lot of coloring books aren't so detailed, so you can blow them up and trace them with the opaque machine and have it as your visual. Even little stickers sometimes have the cutest pictures on them, and they will blow up. Then you trace them and color them. And the best idea, though, I've used throughout the years is from other people. Whether it be books or whether it be going around and seeing their boards, other people. You say, well, I don't want to always copycat. No, you take the idea and you make it your own. But I don't know about you. I am not original. But I can take an idea that I see and I can change it and make it mine. I just need that jump start. So get help from other people, from other things. Get a jump start. Okay? What things make good backgrounds for visuals? Oh, lots of things. I'm thinking of a bulletin board, okay? Right away, I think of the rolls of paper that we have in the library. That makes a very nice visual, but you don't want to do that every time. Okay? I know they have different colors, and you say, well, in September I used green, and October I used the fall color, orange. Yeah, well, there's lots of other things. All right? So let's think about it. You've got your roll paper. You've got material. Material is such a nice... One time I did a fish theme, and I found at Joann Fabrics on clearance a fish material. It looked like it was the sea with fish in it. Wow, it was so nice. You can find stuff and you say, well, I don't have $35 to go do a 4x4 board. No, you find it on clearance. I go to Goodwill for the express purpose of looking through material and seeing if there's any good material that I can use for backgrounds for bulletin boards. I take it home and wash it to get the, to smell out. And then before I put my bulletin boards up, I throw the material in the dryer. Get the wrinkles out as much as you can there. I never ever iron my material because you throw it in the dryer, then you fold it carefully, and while you're putting your material up, you stretch it. I never iron, and I don't have wrinkles. Okay, material is excellent, excellent use. This is going to sound funny. One time I did a bulletin board in January, and I had a frozen lake. So I had white around the outside of it for the snowbank, and I used tin foil for the frozen lake. It turned out to be so neat. And what I think the kids liked the most of all was the uniqueness of it. So there's all different kinds of things that you can get. Those plasticky tablecloths, there's so many different things that you can use. Stores do have total corrugated board backgrounds, but you're going to pay for those. So it's just up to you. But there's all different kinds. One time I did a checkerboard, and all I did was take red and black construction paper, boom, 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 boom. That was my background. And then I made these huge checkers, and we played. It was a competition month. It was fun. There's so many things you can do. Okay? So that's what's so nice about going and taking pictures of other people's things. It gives you more ideas for yourself. What makes good letters? If there's anything I can't stand, is sloppy boards, sloppy letters. But you don't need to make all your letters. There's ways that you can get them. You can use stencils. You can take the stencils that you find and you can put them on your construction paper and you can cut them out. That's fine. I've done that before. But what I want to say about using stencils, turn those stencils upside down so that you're looking at them backwards on the paper. Okay? Trace it and then cut your letter out backwards. That way, if you go off the line while you're cutting it, nobody's going to know it. Because once you're done cutting, you flip it over. I think of the letter E. Do the E backwards. Once you're done cutting it, you flip it over to the right side. So if you're doing your stencils, don't use a marker. Okay? The only reason you would use a marker for that is if you say, I want that black marker as a bold outline, and you cut the outside of it, then do them face up. But for the most part, I turn my stencils upside down, trace them, cut them, and I never have the lines. You don't want the mess up lines, okay? Stencils, construction paper. You know what? The Dollar Tree has packs of punch-out letters. And I always get 2 packs of them because sometimes they don't have enough vowels for me or certain letters. For $2, I've got whatever color I want. And if you're careful when you put them up, you can reuse them. The thing I would say about your punch-out letters, if you use them, sometimes when you punch them out, you have the little, cut the phrase off. Don't leave those. That looks tacky. Okay? I've done this for objects too, but one time I taught down in southern Indiana for a couple years, and I went to this store and I saw on the side by the dumpster books of wallpaper ideas. Okay, you know what I'm talking about? And what was neat about it, it was the actual wallpaper. So I went in and I said, hey, I see those are out at the dumpster. Are you throwing them away? Yeah, they're outdated, they're old-fashioned. I said, do you think I could have them? They gave them to me. And I made the neatest little visuals. When I say visuals, I say manipulative. Like there was some really neat brown fall and I made nuts. So I have little nuts, big nuts, and it's not paper. I didn't have to contact them because it was wallpaper. And I still use them today, 20, 30 years later. Okay? Wallpaper. You can make letters if you wanted to out of it. I think your hand would be very sore by the time you end up getting them cut, but you never have to worry about them ripping up. All right? So wallpaper for anything. Felt makes a very good letter. Felt letters. If you use a material background, felt will stick. Now the problem with that is when we have the air conditioning on and then we have the heat on and then the air conditioning, sometimes the different temperatures causes them to let loose. So you have to check your board out and make sure the letters are still up. But felt makes a wonderful, wonderful letter. So there's two thoughts though with letters. The first one is this. When you walk into a room, across the room is your board, your letters have to be big enough that you can read the board from across the room. I used to have, they took them down now, but I used to have a 4x4 board, and you can't have these honking big letters on a small board. So I would save my 1-inch letters for that board, but I made sure that my title was not very wordy. It was maybe 1 and 2 word titles so that I could spread them out so people can still see them. But I would say that your stencil size letters are the best letters to use on the whole, okay? Make sure they're big enough that when you walk in a room, you can read your title across the room, okay? And then there's two different thoughts on this, but if you're dealing with very small children, you're going to hear me say over and over and over and over and over again, consistency is a key. So think about this. If I am trying to teach a kindergartner the difference between a capital and a little letter, and let's go all the way up to 1st and 2nd grade. I'm also teaching them when do you use capital letters and when do you not use capital letters, then I need to be consistent in the way I do it. I don't want all capital letters for little kids who are just learning them. I have a capital A and a little a, and on their papers they have to match up the two to see if they can tell the difference. Then I need to have capital and little letters for those younger students. So as you get older, they know it's not as important, but on those K3, K4, K5, try to make sure that you use capital and little letters, okay? Just a thought on that. Okay, so that's on visuals. This is the second part to the introductory. This is introduction to reading. And you're going to hear my thoughts on what I think about reading. Okay? And my first thought is reading is the most important subject. There's no question in my mind, because God commanded us to learn to read. Okay? So reading is the most important. And right behind that, in parenthesis, and as I go through the class many times, I'll say something and I know it's going to be on the test, or I know it's extremely important to me, or if you hear me say, this is so important, you might want to just put a little asterisk in front of it. It probably means you'll see it on the test. So, behind reading is the most important subject, put this in parenthesis. And it is so important. Reading requires good thinking. That's just a thought, but it is a true statement. Reading requires good thinking. You just don't do it. You have to have the brain in gear. And at the very beginning, when we're teaching kids to read, that brain is not in gear. But it's fun to watch it start to work. And as I'm teaching them to learn to read, I'm teaching them to think. Reading requires good thinking. All right? So let's say, why is reading the most important? I already told you one. But it's the basis for every other subject. Think about it. Every other subject, you say, well, the teacher gets up there and teaches. Yes, But then doesn't the student have to read the instructions if they're going to do homework, if they're going to do their work? Everything has the basis of reading for it. It's the most important subject. The next thing, it's very important for Christians. You know, when our country was first founded, they started learning to read for the sole purpose that their kids would learn the Bible and read the Bible and know what God wanted for them. We've come a long ways away from that. But not Christians. That still should be our main goal, is that my children are going to grow up and I want them to know what God says so that they can live a happy Christian life, a successful Christian life. Okay, so underneath it's important for Christians is we learn to read the Bible. And then this thought just complements it. If we learn to read well enough, we'll understand what we read. Remember the verse, our Bible verse, and cause them to understand the reading. That's the goal. How many times have I had a child in my class and they read a sentence, and maybe it's because they're too slow and they're struggling through it, or maybe it's because they're just not thinking while they're reading, and they get done with the sentence. I ask them a question about it and they say, "Ma'am, I don't know." They weren't thinking while they were reading. If I teach them well enough, they'll read well enough, they're going to process and they're going to understand. That's my goal as a teacher, that every student will learn to read and learn to understand what they're reading. All right? So, capital letter C, the goal. The goal is to teach children to learn to read the Bible and to know God's Word. See, I get ahead of myself, but it all flows together. As a teacher, my goal is that those students are going to learn to read the Bible and they're going to know God's Word. It's fun. I've got parents coming to me now. In kindergarten, we learn to read, and at the very end, we start giving them passages, small passages, verses to read out of the Bible. And they struggle with it, but they get it. And over the summer, they seem to just flourish with that. And I've had so many parents see me since school started and say, "Wow, for family devotions, we started letting them read, and they're doing so well." That's the goal. That's the goal, is that they will learn to read the Bible and to understand it. Think about this. The Bible is the only book that we can read and absolutely positively know is true. All other books are man's thoughts on it. So other books are good to read, yes. But the Bible is the one that we know is absolutely true. And that's our goal, is to get them reading the Bible. The Bible, here, this is extremely important. The Bible is the absolute standard. It's not the Bible and, it's the Bible. That's our absolute standard, and that's what we need to teach the kids. The Bible is 100% true because it was written by God, and therefore it needs to be our standard. Make it your standard because it was written by God. He told men what to write. Okay? Now, along with reading is the most important subject, I have this thought, and it's the discernment of reading material. How many times have I seen students bringing their own books in? One time I had a kindergartner bring a book in. It was a huge book like this. It was big. And he says, "Ma'am, did you want to see my book?" And he brought it up on my desk. I said, "Yes, set that there at playtime. I'll take a look at that. Right now, we got to get going on class." So it was sitting on my desk for the longest time. Okay, playtime comes. I said, "All right, boys and girls, we're going to play with the puzzles. We can do this." They start playing. And I thought, oh, I got to look at that book so I can give it back to him. I opened it up, and the first thing I saw was a stone art statue. Need I say more? And I went, "Oh!" So I just kind of wrote a note to Mom, stuck it in there, and said, "Did you happen to look through this book first before giving it to your child?" And I said, "Oh, that was such a wonderful book. Take that home and give it to Mom. show her the note that I wrote her, just let her open it and get the note out. And later on, she called me, so I was so sorry, Mrs. Brader, I can't believe. I said, it's okay. We just have to be discerning for our students right now because they're not old enough to discern, but that is something that we will be teaching them, the discernment of the reading material. Another time I walked past the 5th and 6th grade classroom, and there was a boy really, really into his work, and I thought something's odd there. And so I just the teacher had stepped out for something and had them working. I stepped in, and I just looked around, and he was reading a Louis L'Amour book. It was supposed to be in school. Now, I came from an unsaved background, and I know there are a few good Louis L'Amour books, but I know that there are a lot that are not, okay? And so I just walked up and I said, are you working on unrelated material? Oh, ma'am, I got finished with my work, and so the teacher said that I could read this. And I said, okay, well, I would like you to put that away, take that home, and tell Mom that's inappropriate for school, okay? I get a call later on. Mrs. Brader, what's wrong with Louis L'Amour? I was like, oh, well, the type of things that go on in many of those books, you better make sure that you're looking at it first, okay? But that's where, okay, so then it can go to the extreme too. Y'all know Mickey Mouse, right? And you know his favorite saying, oh gosh, okay? So the little golden books, I had them in my home, and I remember my son Stephen bringing me the book and saying, Mommy, there's a bad word in this book. And I went, a Mickey Mouse book? I went, show me what it is. So he opened it up and he pointed to it, and I went, you're right, let's get that out of there. What was I doing? I was teaching him, be discerning. Good job. We don't want to read bad words, okay? That's what we need to be discerning. So think about your students. Kindergartners are not able to be discerning yet, are they? They haven't had the experience. They don't know. So we as the teacher has to be that discernment for them. But think about this. This is really important. In the discerning area, the author, you might want to write this down, the author has something in mind when he's writing, correct? Nobody's just going to write a book to publish and say, oh, I don't care what I say, I'm just writing a bunch of stuff. No, the author has something in mind. Here's what it is. He wants you to believe what he writes. Okay, so you have all these different authors, and you have different thoughts, and you have different philosophies, that any author, that his philosophy, he wants to become your philosophy. You better be a discerning teacher. All those books that I have on my shelf, I've gone through every one of them. Okay, so do you think I have any dinosaur books on my shelf? No, because what does every dinosaur book start with? Oh, I take that back. I have Danny and the Dinosaur on my shelf. That's my favorite book. Millions and millions of years ago. Is that true? No. Some of the cutest books. I open it up. Millions and... No. You say, oh, Mrs. Brader, they're not really going to believe that. They're too young right now. I cannot do that to them. I can't confuse them. You say, you go overboard on that. Wouldn't you rather go overboard and not have a confused child? And as he gets older and he learns that God created the universe and the world thinks otherwise, then he can get that book and say, oh yeah, here's one of those that the teacher was talking about. Stupid people that believe in dinosaurs, million evolution. Okay? They're not ready for it yet. So we have to be discerning for them. The author wants you to believe what he believes. So be careful what you put in front of your children. Be critical. And we want to teach our students to be critical also. But in order for me to be critical, I have to know what I believe. Right? And that's where it comes back to know. have a reason, have a purpose for your teaching, you need to know so that you can be critical. And then the third thing was, you probably have it, you have to teach the children to be careful. You have to teach them. So I do. Kindergarten, first grade, I moved up to first grade this year, yay. I have students come with a book and say, ma'am, is this okay? I'll take a look at that. We'll talk about that. And at playtime, I pull them over and say, what does it say? Well, ma'am, it says this. What do you think? What does God say about that? Is that author following God? No. So you need to remember that. If you're going to read this book, this author does not believe what God says about it, or he wouldn't have said that. Okay? That you're the extension of the parent. And then I'd get on the phone and I'd say, why don't you put that away? Show that to your mom and dad tonight. See what they say. Because you're just the extension. You are not mom and dad. I could not make that 5th and 6th grader stop reading the Louis L'Amour books, but I could call the parent and say, do you realize your son's reading this book? And of course I got, no, I didn't. Okay? But it was my job to bring it up. And it's your job as a teacher to bring it up, to make sure that that parent knows. Because remember, as a teacher, you're an extension of the parent. Do your job. Now, there's a lot of different types of reading material. I have all different kinds of reading material for my students to read. And it's okay. But you just have to know some things about it. So let's talk about the different kinds real quickly. There's fiction. Anyone want to tell me what fiction is? What kind of stories are fiction? What kind? They're not true. Okay? Oh, I can't let them read fiction. That's going to teach them to lie. No. They have imaginations. We want to build those imaginations. They can learn so much. This is a story. You're going to be writing stories too. They're not going to write stories that are all true. They're going to make up stories. Okay? But we have to watch for some things. If I'm going to have fiction books on my shelf for them to read, I have to check some things. The first thing I need to check is I need to check the morals of the characters in the book. I do not want to put books in front of my students that have the people doing things that I would never. Okay, so you can't have books where the kids have a bad attitude and are talking back and are disobeying the parents. You don't want to put those kind of books in front of your kids. Because what happens? We're sinners. Do we pick out the part that oh, they got saved and now they're doing right? No. They focus on, look what they did. Oh, they got in trouble for that. That's not funny. So be careful the books that you put in front of your kids that they don't have bad morals, that they dress properly, okay? And check their lifestyles. Check the lifestyles. And at the beginning of their reading careers, you have to be the detective. And you have to make sure that you only give them good stuff. You say, well, they bring it from home. Well, I can say I don't want that in my classroom, but I can't keep them from reading it at home. But I can make sure that the stuff I put in front of them is the right stuff. Okay? So fiction stories are very good. And here's where I go many times when I have a student that hates to read. In my family, I have avid readers and they get in trouble for reading too much. They're in a corner reading a book when they should be doing the dishes or something, okay, in my family. They got in trouble. But I also have some of my family that hated to read. So those are the types of book I went to try to pique their interest. I found something that they enjoyed and I gave that type of book to them to read. Because that, it at least made it okay to read then. I found something that they enjoyed, and it was the nonfiction usually that pulled them in. Okay, so use it as a tool to help the ones who don't really care about reading. Another type of book is a biography. What's a biography? Joanna, what's a biography?
Story of someone's life.
Mm-hmm. And when we can get The young biographies, kids love those. I have kids that are asking for biographies and they can't read them yet. Well, why would you want to take that book and read it? Man, because I want my mom to read it to me. Why? Because they like hearing about people. Biographies are good. And sometimes I'll have in the classroom, I'll have biographies, and I'll say, okay, we're going to have a reading time. If we get all of our work done, we have 5 minutes left, we're going to do a chapter, and we're going to read about this person's life. They're just listening, but they love it. They love to read biographies or hear biographies read to them because it's a real person. They can connect with that. All right, so biographies. But I have to watch with that too. What I put in front of them, I have to check to see what kind of person it is that I am telling the story about. And a lot of people that tell a biography, they have a bad beginning. And just because they had a bad beginning doesn't mean I can't read that book. But I don't want to put a book about a person there who they're highlighting that bad beginning and they're uplifting that bad. I did everything imaginable wrong. No. We don't want to do that. There's an attitude there. Okay? So just because it's about a person doesn't mean you can't use it. But just be careful. If it's uplifting an immoral lifestyle, no. You don't want to put that in front of your students. But a book can say, and I was a really wicked person, and I got into the wrong type of stuff. And then they go on with their life. That's good, because the kids can see, I ruined my life because of this, but God was merciful. Those are good. So watch what kind of person it is. And again, watch their lifestyles and their morals. You don't want to put books in front of them that are going to open up that, ooh, I wonder if I could get by with that. Because students will do that. And the last thing underneath the biography is just be discerning. Be discerning. Okay? Even if I'm not 100% in agreement with what that person believes, I could still read that book. Nobody is ever going to be in 100% agreement with everybody, right? But they still can be good people. People are different. Third type of material is nonfiction, the true stories. When you're putting true stories in front of students, you have to watch for some really important things. The first thing, you watch for evolution. Watch for evolution. You want to watch for atheism, a story that is trying to get across the point that there's no God. You don't want to put that in front of a student. Watch for the idea of humanism, that man is his own God. You don't need a God. That's not what our students need to be reading. And watch for socialism, that man can't take care of himself, so it's a good thing to have the government taking care of you. You know, there's a time for the students to read those type of books, but it's not before they learn about it and understand and can make those decisions. I had somebody tell me once that you're too protective of your children. You need to let them get out and see the world. And I said, no, I'm not going to throw my children to the devil, to the world, before I've given them the tools to be discerning themselves. So we give them those tools, and then as they're older and can make good judgments, then we put the different philosophies out and tell them what God says about it, tell them what's wrong with it, and let them make those judgments. Okay? So then the last thing here, we just have time for it. My alarm is going to go off wherever I put it. Is that this thought right here. Keep this in mind. This is important. You should have a biblical approach to censorship, not a purist approach. And this is all. You can put this down in parentheses and it should explain it just fine. Here it is. You can know sin without experiencing it. You can know sin without experiencing it. You just read the Bible and trust what it says. Okay, so a biblical approach says, Drinking is wrong. The Bible says wine is a mocker. Okay? Oh, so drinking is wrong. The purist approach says, somebody says that's wrong. I better try that and see if it really is. That's not what God wants from us, and it's not what He wants us to teach our students. We need a biblical approach. You read the Bible, trust the Bible, and you'll be good. Okay? All right. Thank you.